Okay, everybody. Welcome to Houseplant Academy, Houseplants and the Holidays. I'm glad you're all here for the final one for the calendar year. This is probably one of my, well, probably my favorite one to do because I love all the holiday houseplants. Enjoy this picture I have here of the ice crushed poinsettias. They're beautiful. There are all kinds of different varieties of poinsettias other than just the plain red, so definitely look for those. So I wanted to let you know I have set the dates for the Houseplant Academy for 2026, the dates and the topics for spring at least. So we've got creating terrariums on February 19th, and that one will actually be, if you decide to come in person, it's going to be on the second floor in the Wellness Center. It's not going to be in this room right here. So it's just over there where they have the healthcare workers. Register for that. And then we have pest control in March. And then we're going to talk about creating living walls with houseplants in April. And then we'll go over succulents and cacti in May. So it should be a good spring of topics. And as I always say, if you have any ideas for topics that I haven't covered that you would like for me to cover, or if you have any questions that you'd like me to cover in these classes, please send me an email or just tell me, and I will definitely try to incorporate that for you. Okay. And then along those lines, if you have any horticulture questions, we have answers, or we like to think that we have answers. We can find the answers. You can give us a call, send us an email, really anything to do with plants. We will find the answer for you if we don't happen to know right at our fingertips. So definitely take advantage of the knowledge that we have here. So we'll talk about some commonly celebrated winter holidays. Christmas, obviously we know that's December 25th. There's Hanukkah, which is coming up the 14th to the 22nd, and then Kwanzaa, the 26th through January 1st. And these are all some commonly celebrated holidays in Gwinnett County and beyond, and holidays for which people like to decorate their homes and try to, spruce things up, make things a little more festive. So we'll talk about the holiday cactus to begin with. I think it's probably the most popular besides a poinsettia, one of the most interesting and exciting plants, I think, because of all the different colors and variety. So let's talk about how to care for it. They like bright, indirect light, no direct, intense sunlight. So don't go put it in your south-facing home window. Don't go put it right under your grow light, close to the bulb. It just wants that bright and direct like so many houseplants do. It loves the 75 to 80 degree temperature. It will not tolerate a frost. It likes it cool but never cold. And I always say for these to do their best, they do great when you put them outside for spring and summer. They love the heat and humidity. They love the rain. Definitely keep them watered, of course. The range can be from November through January, depending on which type of cactus you have and how it's responding to the environment. Frequent watering in a well-drained soil. You don't want it to sit in a soggy soil. I buy the succulent and cacti mix for planting my holiday cactus. And fertilizer is really important. And I learned the importance of this for the holiday cactus this past year because I was gifted a humongous old holiday cactus by one of our master gardeners, and I didn't fertilize it at first. And it really was kind of like petered out and didn't do much last Christmas. So this summer, I diligently followed my own instructions. I fertilized every month, and it has just been gorgeous and putting out the bloom. So when you think about it, plants that bloom need the food to do so. They need that energy. And then once it starts blooming, you'll stop fertilizing. Okay, yeah. So pests, very few pests or disease issues with this plant, which is also very nice. So we'll talk about a few different types of holiday cactus. They're not all the same. That first one, the Thanksgiving cactus, is the Schlumbergera truncata. And then the Christmas cactus is the Buckley version. And then the Ripsaladopsis is the Easter cactus. And you can see how different they are just by looking at the leaves and little spikes. I've got an Easter cactus and it's just like this. It's very rounded. Whereas the other one, the Thanksgiving cactus, has the claws. And then the Christmas cactus kind of has these little scallops here. And they all bloom at different times. So that Thanksgiving cactus is more November to January. The Christmas cactus is more December to February. And then that Easter cactus is more late March to May. They belong to two different genera, Ripsaladopsis or Schlumbergera, which I mentioned. That Ripsaladopsis is often referred to as an Easter cactus because it does bloom in the spring. And then the Schlumbergera are the plants that commonly bloom November through December. There are so many different color varieties, and most of these, when you go buy them at the store or the nursery, they're labeled as zygocactus. but they're not zygocactus anymore. That is a really an old name being used. The hybrids between the two have varying bloom times. The zygocactus is actually a Thanksgiving cactus, and it's no longer scientifically accurate, but the term is still used. Okay, so let's talk about signs of stress in your beloved old holiday cactus. And look at this humongous, gorgeous holiday cactus over here. It's not mine, it's from Country Living magazine, but the one that I was gifted was pretty much on par with that size. When they have reduced flower bud formation, which mine did, flower bud drop. So that's whenever you get those buds, and then instead of opening up like they're supposed to and blooming, they just drop. Reduced growth of the stems, so they're not getting longer like they should be. Shriveling of the youngest stems, that's one of the worst, especially when it's well hydrated. You look at it and think, why is it shriveling? Dropping of those younger stem segments, which is otherwise known as self-pruning. You don't want that to happen. Or if it gets those little hair-like adventitious roots on the base of the stem segments, that is also a sign of stress. And I think a lot of us see those and think, oh, my plant's so healthy, it's growing new roots, it's, expanding. Not really. That's not really what we want in our holiday cactus. So take that as a sign of stress. To prevent this, repot it every 4 to 5 years. Make sure that you remove all old soil when you repot it and give it some fresh soil. So do those things and fertilize until it blooms, and you will probably have really good luck with your cactus. Now, sometimes they can't be saved. Prune back any dead roots and allow the healthy roots to air dry before you repot. After a few days, repot into fresh soil. Provide water sparingly and only to the area of the soil with the new roots. So that's the best thing you can do to try to rehabilitate a dying or near dead holiday cactus. That's what you want to do. Give it some TLC, and sometimes they just don't make it, and sometimes we have to make the tough choice to pitch it and start fresh. So how does my holiday cactus know when to bloom? How does it know it's November or December? And that has to do with photoperiod, which is the number of hours of daylight that the plant receives. So cool night temperatures, along with the shorter days, stimulate your cactus to put out buds. Now, some people who keep their holiday cactus indoors all year have to do like a manual stimulation of this photoperiod. They have to keep it in a warm room, or they keep it in a warm room typically, and they have to move it for 10 hours of daylight and 14 hours of darkness for approximately 4 weeks. So you want to stimulate what's going on outdoors. Once the buds set, you can cease that practice. But if you do like I do and put them all outside, I keep mine on a shady patio, then they're already getting those cues from the outdoors, from the temperature, from the daylight length. If you want it to bloom at a certain time, then you have to time this practice around your desired bloom date. So you just kind of figure out when you want it to bloom, and then you count back based on those 4 weeks of when you have to give it the specific daylight and darkness hours. So amaryllis, another real star of the holiday plant show, they can be purchased as bare bulbs, planted bulbs, or most often we see these days very popular, the wax bulbs. And I have a wax bulb here for you guys to look at. The larger the bulb, the more flowers it will produce, so always choose the largest bulb available. I know some of us have been to Growers Outlet, and they've got some pretty large bulbs there on offering. Inspect the bulb to make sure it's firm and dry. You don't want any visible mold or decay. Any signs of it potentially rotting even a little bit, don't take a chance. Just skip that one and move on to a healthier variety. It's fine to see new growth or leaves coming from the bulb. Sometimes when you go purchase those bulbs, they'll be in big boxes with other bulbs, and you'll see little leaves coming out, or they have the little box sets you can buy like at the home improvement stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace. And you'll see leaves starting to come out, and you think, oh my gosh, is something wrong with this? It's trying to grow outside the box. Totally fine, totally normal. You can take it home and it will right itself once it's exposed to the proper light and temperature and water. Choose a narrow planter that's about 1 inch wider than the widest part of the bulb, and the depth needs to be twice the height of the bulb. So what that really means is you don't want to put it in a wide pot. They like a very narrow top to the pot. It doesn't need very much, but you want it to be deep. Place it in a sunny window. Sunny, but you don't want it to be too intense. I keep mine around the house in varying degrees of light, and they do really well. Water when the top 2 inches of soil are dry, but don't allow the bulb to sit in water because it will encourage root rot, which you don't want. You want to start fertilizing when the new growth is visible and use a half strength fertilizer each time you water. So you're purchasing a fertilizer and it says to, put a tablespoon to every quart, or just as an example, you want to do half a tablespoon per quart. So the fertilizer should be high in phosphorus. That's the middle number. That's what you want to use. So an example would be like a 10, 20, 15. You want that middle number to be higher. So after the plant is done flowering, keep the green leaves going by watering and placing in a sunny window. And then in September, you could go ahead and move to a dark closet for 8 to 12 weeks, then bring it out to water it, put it in a bright spot. Now, you can do that. Or since we live here in Gwinnett County in Georgia, we can plant them outside, which is what I did last year. I bought like 12 to 14 bulbs just in a bulk purchase from a website. And after they all bloomed, I planted them outside and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to see what happens. And many of them did bloom. Not all of them did. And the reason I think that is probably they didn't have enough time to store up energy before the spring to bloom so quickly after blooming in December. But then I just had one bloom actually like a month ago, which is, it didn't know that it was not time to bloom, but it was a big surprise because it's on the south side of my house and it looks really, really pretty there. Looked pretty before we got this cold. So those wax bulbs are meant to be single-use bulbs. They can be made to reflower, but they take time. If you want to try to get them to reflower, you do have to peel all of that wax off. So don't expect it to just stay in the wax and then over time suddenly bloom. It's probably not going to happen. You will have to peel it off and then plant it in some soil and give it some fertilizer and really allow it to maybe take a year or two to store up some more nutrients to bloom again. But it's been deprived of the water and nutrients that other planted bulbs would have. Paper whites, so they don't require a cold storage period to bloom. Most of the time, when you're purchasing these at a nursery or a big box store, they've been pre-chilled or they're prepared. They're ready to be forced in flowering. They can be forced in clear, shallow bowls with no drainage holes, or they can be forced in pots. I've seen people just put them on a dish with some rocks or some ornaments and they grow. I mean, they don't take much. If you're forcing in a bowl, partially fill it with gravel or stones and then just add water so that the water touches that bottom of that bulb. You don't want the bulb to be sitting in the water because, of course, that would encourage it to rot. There's that delicate balance. You want it to be sitting on top of the water, but not in the water. It's not too complicated, but you can mess it up if you try to drown it. So if you force it in a pot, partially fill the container with soil and add the bulbs on top, and then add more bulbs more soil around the bulbs so that the tips stick up. Keep it moist throughout that forcing period, and then you will have some beautiful blooms. Now they tend to get very tall. You can water them with some concoction of water and rubbing alcohol, which will cause them to not grow as tall. I've never done that because I've just never wanted to. I always like to see them get so tall. But if you would like to give them some rubbing alcohol to try to stunt their growth and not make them so tall and floppy, by all means, you can try that. You probably will have to stake them, though. The way that they are in this picture, I always think there's no way that they're that tall and they're that stiff that they're standing upright. There's got to be some sort of invisible system that's holding those stems upright, because if they're in your house, they're just going to flop to the side. So live greenery like wreaths, garlands, and swags, we love all of that. Gathering it from around your home can really give you the freshest and most varied selection. And I used to be intimidated by doing this because I thought, I am not crafty. I don't know how to go gather greenery and put it together into some sort of beautiful arrangement. But I started to kind of just, say, okay, I'm just going to see what I can do. And I was able to clip some pine and some other greens from around the house and just stick them in some floral foam that was wet. And they looked kind of cute, that it was nice and they were fresh and they did the job. It didn't really take me any sort of special crafting or thought out design. They just looked nice having them around. Remember, though, that when you're gathering them from your yard or from, your own shrubs, try to cut and prune them so you're doing it evenly. You don't want to go cut a bunch of cuttings of evergreens off of one side of a tree or a shrub and then leave it lopsided. It's going to look funny. So try to do it so it's not going to be super visible. The best for indoors, of course, just like with trees, the pines, firs, and cedars, they dry out slowly and they hold their needles the best. best for outdoors, like putting on your porch or on your, like on your doors or on your railing, would be hemlock, spruces, and most broadleaf greens. And so ground pine is known as the princess pine or creeping cedar. It's native and slow growing, and they do say that they do not want you to be harvesting that because it's a native thing that takes a long time to restore itself. So make sure you have permission before you cut any greenery that's not on your own direct property. And that's kind of common sense. I think it doesn't necessarily need to be said, but you have to say it. So taking care of evergreens, always choose what looks really fresh. Don't pick anything with shedding needles or brown tips. Kind of, self-explanatory, obvious there. But sometimes when you're shopping and everything looks a little crispy, you think, well, I'll just pick what looks the best and make the best of it. But you really want to kind of hold out for that freshest and healthiest looking greenery that you can find. Make sure the needles can bend without breaking. So take those. My Norfolk pine that I have here in the office today for you guys to see, I've had it for 2 or 3 years now. This is probably its third Christmas, I guess. And it's not grown super big. It was really small when I got it. It just stays underneath the fluorescent lights in the office. I've not repotted it. It needs to be repotted, but it's got lots of new growth. And I make sure I keep it well watered. And so when I take those branches, they do bend freely without breaking. And so that's a good sign. You want to watch for that. And then keep it away from open flames and heat. That's another kind of obvious thing, just like with your Christmas tree. You wouldn't want to have it near open flames or heat because it will catch fire. Hollies, you'll use mistletoe and Jerusalem cherry all have poisonous berries, so don't leave these out for your pets or your kids, or don't try to sample berries off of the greenery you purchase. Not a good idea. And then I love using wilt-proof or wilt stop for my wreath. I always get a fresh wreath for the front door. I sometimes do some fresh greenery in the house, just depending on time and what I can get to. And these products really do work. So basically, you hydrate them with some water with a mister, and then you squirt them with this. It kind of seals that moisture in. It's almost like putting a clear varnish on top of your fingernails, if you think of it like that. But it really does help prolong the life of the greenery. And you can get these at nurseries. I've seen them at Lowe's, Home Depot, places like that, or just on Amazon. So poinsettia, these are very beautiful and very underestimated as far as how long they can last. So these can really go from year to year if you have a lot of patience, which I don't necessarily. A lot of times I treat these as annuals, disposable for me. But if you want to keep them going and save some money, you can obviously do that. They bloom when the days get shorter, of course. What we consider our flowers are just the modified leaves or bracts. They're not poisonous, but the sticky sap can cause dermatitis. And so that's a kind of a controversial statement, because anybody who has cats or, has been told, be careful of your poinsettia, that's poisonous to the cats, it'll kill them if they eat it. It's actually not true. You can go on to ASPCA and look that up. Now, that doesn't mean if your cat gorges themselves on the poinsettia, they're not going to get sick. Anytime one of your pets tries to make a buffet of your houseplants, they're not used to that in their system. They're probably going to get sick, but it's not considered poisonous. Bright daylight, 65 to 70 degrees indoors, away from drafts and fluctuating temperatures. They don't like to be going cold, hot, cold, hot. They don't want to be, by a heating vent or by a ceiling fan. Keep the soil moist and water it when it feels dry. Remove the foil overwrap when watering. No need to fertilize your poinsettia during the holidays. And if you want to keep it after the holidays, start fertilizing when you see new growth. And you'll want to do that at half strength every 3 to 4 weeks. My thing is, I don't have the patience necessarily. I've got so many plants that to just have more extra poinsettias sitting around that aren't doing anything but just being green, I can't. I give myself a break on that and say, you know what, it's okay. You've done your job. You can go to houseplant heaven for now. And then University of Minnesota Extension has a year-long guide to getting poinsettias to rebloom. So if you would like to get your poinsettias to rebloom, or you want to practice that, take a look at that extension, and it'll tell you exactly what to do. Cyclamen, they bloom in the winter for up to 3 months. Very beautiful, bright indirect light. The cool temps are preferred, but newer varieties can tolerate a wider range of indoor temperatures. Allow them to dry out between waterings. You don't want them to rot. They're often treated as a short-lived winter holiday houseplant. Pinch the spent blooms to encourage them to keep flowering. They'll not tolerate frost. One of the things that surprised me so much is when I moved here to Georgia from Missouri and I went to a nursery and I guess it was January or December and I saw just rows and rows of cyclamen and I was like, why do they have cyclamen out? It's, winter time. And they told me people actually do decorate with these outdoors in Georgia and they just cover them whenever we're going to get a frost or freezing temperatures. And when it's just cold, they just can uncover them. I had no idea. It really surprised me because I thought that they were I only knew them as a house plant. When purchasing, look for a plant with lots of buds. And really, I say that for all blooming plants. It's better to get ones with lots of buds on them because that means they have a whole show waiting for you. If you get one that has a lot of blooms already open, then they're just about done probably. So rosemary are very cute. The tree-shaped rosemary, you can decorate like a little indoor tree. It's drought tolerant outdoors, but not indoors. So you do have to keep this thing wet. It is not acclimated to living indoors. So if you're going to have this cute little tree in your house for a while, you do need to make sure it's moist the whole time. Place it in a bright sunny window. Cut sprigs for cooking, but try to keep its shape because it does look like a cute little tree. It can live for a couple of months indoors, but it wants to be outside. And the scent has lots of benefits. It can reduce anxiety, improve memory and cognition, and boost mood. It's nice just having a really good smelling plant around your house, I think, to just sniff sometimes and just enjoy. And this is one that can be what I like to call a temporary house plant. Norfolk Island pine. I love when they're really big like this and people do decorate them like a real Christmas tree. It wants a brightly lit area in your home. Like I said, mine's on top of the shelves in my cubicle and it's really close to our fluorescent lights, so it gets a lot of light that way. Water when the surface of the soil feels dry. It lets me know when it's too dry. It wants to be watered regularly because being indoors, it's so dry in the office and probably dry inside your home. It does not want to get dry. And if the tips start to get kind of crunchy or brown, you know that you're not watering it enough. It prefers temps of 65 to 75, so move it indoors before winter. All the plants I have in the office, I don't take outside because that's just too much. There's nowhere outside to put them, and that's too much of an ordeal. But I think that it would probably really do like most houseplants and just do wonderfully getting that respite outdoors and in the natural environment. Fertilize it spring through fall every 2 to 4 weeks. And then know that it's not actually a pine. It's endemic to Norfolk Island near New Zealand. And these trees reach 150 to 200 feet. I remember when I was looking this up and I saw there was like an aerial view, like a Google Maps or Google Photos something where someone had taken a drone and taken pictures of these Norfolk Island pines actually in New Zealand on this island, and I couldn't believe how big and beautiful they were. So they're pretty interesting. You should look that up if you've never seen them in their natural habitat. Lemon cypress. I feel like these are a little bit more difficult, to be honest with you, but they are fun to have around the holidays. They look very refreshing and very wintry. They're called lemon cypress because when you touch them or brush the leaves, they do release that lemony citrus scent. They have a lemony chartreuse color as well. These dwarf topiaries are really cute. They look like little trees. They reach up to 3 feet in height. They like 60 degrees temperature, which most homes can't offer. So try to keep them next to a cold window or an unheated room if possible. I don't know if most people have unheated rooms these days, but I remember like the homes of my parents and grandparents' generations, there was always an unheated porch, like some sort of porch where we put plants like this that like the cold, but they need to be protected. If your home has that, great. They typically need to be repotted in larger containers, just something suitable for potted plants. They're probably not going to be happy year-round indoors in your house. They're great for the winter for a while, and then you'll want to move them outside. Don't let them dry out, just like the other types of the Norfolk pine and the rosemary. Keep them evenly moist. If it's dry in your house, you may have to water 2 times a week. If they do dry out, just like the other trees, they'll crisp up and not rebound. Fertilize once in the spring, and we recommend holly tone, tree tone, plant tone, biotone. Those are all good for little trees. Pruning is essential. So if you would like to keep it, in this cute little shape, you've got to prune it, and then pruning will actually encourage it to grow. So just clip the tips just like you would if you're trimming hair to get it to grow. The Kalanchoe, this prefers bright light and it'll get spindly in low light. So if you've got one of these that's getting leggy, it's because you have it in too low of light. It is a succulent, just like all succulents do. They want that bright, direct light. allow the soil to dry out between waterings. You don't want this thing sitting in really super moist soil or undraining soil. I like to plant it with a succulent soil. It likes 50 to 70 degrees during the day, but it likes the cooler night temperatures to flower. And that's really for most of these plants. They want the cooler night temperatures to flower. Fertilize once a month when the plants are actively growing. Move outdoors in the spring, bring back inside before frost. If you want to keep it indoors year round, of course you can. I just find, like I always tell people, that plants are so much happier when they get to have that time outdoors, as long as you're keeping them well watered. They require a photoperiod like poinsettias, so for approximately 6 weeks, you have to leave your kalanchoe in a room where the lights don't get turned on, or place it in a closet and then move it back to a brightly lit room in the morning. And really, that's only if you're not putting it outside. If you put it outside, nature will take care of all that for you. So hellebore, this is one that I've added a few plants to the presentation this year because there are lots of plants on offering as house plants for the holidays, and hellebore is one of them. I've seen these for sale as house plants at Trader Joe's and other stores, and a lot of the online vendors that sell, special holiday baskety type plants like White Flower Farm and those, Jackson Perkins, will sell them as a house plant. So it's also known as the Christmas rose or Lenten rose, which we all know. It's a perennial that typically blooms in December. Hardy zones 4 to 9. It is poisonous if ingested. So if you've got pets around and they like to mess with plants, don't keep this where they can access it. It wants to be in the chilliest part of your home, like an enclosed porch, a drafty entryway, or other chilly area when not on display for holiday gathering. And so what I read about the hellebore when I was researching it as a houseplant for the holidays was very similar to what I learned about bonsai. So bonsai here in Georgia are meant to live outdoors year round. Every single month of the year, they want to be outside. If you want to bring them in for a special gathering or just to enjoy them for a while, you can temporarily, but then they want to go back outside. So if you've got this thing indoors, go put it in a chilly area, for a while, a chilly part of your house. Maybe you have an unheated basement or unheated attic, I don't know. Then you move it back to where you want to display it. So it does take a little finagling if you want to enjoy this in your home and keep it thriving. It likes bright light, water it sparingly, drying out somewhat. Try not to wet the leaves. Wetting leaves when a plant's indoors is usually not a good idea unless you're trying to grow a terrarium plant or something, that really likes a lot of humidity. If the foliage starts to yellow, move it to a colder spot, maybe the garage or a sheltered spot outside. And then you want to put this outdoors once the ground thaws. You do not want to keep it year-round in your house because that's not going to work. But it's a lovely temporary houseplant. Another one that's offered a lot around the holidays when, as a gift plant is jasmine. They smell so wonderfully indoors. There are different varieties. The sandback, the polyanthum, and the grandiflorum are the most popular ones for having indoors. They like the indirect, strong light. They like slightly acidic, well-drained soil, so don't let it sit, in soggy, wet soil. Keep it moist, water at least once a week. But I always say, that really depends on your home environment. Actually feel the soil. Don't just go by a prescription for watering. Actually feel how your plant is reacting. It likes in cooler temps in the winter to encourage blooms. So if you're purchasing one of these plants around this time of year, it's already been, prepped at the nursery or the greenhouse to be blooming at this time of year. So you don't have to really worry about that. You can move it outside for the spring and summer and then bring it back in. If you have it indoors, though, keep away from drafts and vents. They do not like that. Wintergreen, this is a really fun one. And I've seen this a few times at a few places this year, and I've almost bought it a bunch of times. I don't know why I didn't, because once I read more about it, I thought, oh, I really should have done this. Apparently, the wintergreen is actually like the newest, hottest Christmassy holiday plant that the greenhouse industry and the houseplant industry is pushing. It's referred to as tea berry or checkerberry. It's got those dark glossy green leaves, and the berries are wide or pink or red. They're very cute, very festive. It likes the filtered light of a north-facing window. So what I thought was really cool about these plants is they don't need that bright indirect light that almost, you hear about for most indoor plants. They like a north-facing window. They like a shadier, if you will, spot like a fern would. They like a cooler room and moist, well-draining soil. They are typically, you see these as a ground cover outdoors. As a houseplant, though, they're They're very nice. The berries and leaves are edible, but I have a couple of warnings about that before you go munching on one. They're edible and they were used often by Native Americans to treat inflammation. The leaves have a fresh, minty taste. And once I read that, I actually was reminded when I was on some, I can't think of what it was called, but I did some sort of like a Native American Cherokee walk with someone who took us through the woods and was showing us all these different plants, and he let us sample different plants. And I think that we got to taste some wintergreen. But anyway, if it's grown only as a house plant, you're of course not going to get that many berries because it's indoors. It's not going to produce like it would if it was outdoors. Now, some people might be allergic. So the oil is closely related to aspirin. So if you're allergic to aspirin, you don't want to ingest it. But even beyond that, if the plant was grown for ornamental purposes, you don't want to eat it. You want to, only eat something that was grown to be used for an edible purpose. A lot of times plants that are grown for ornamental purposes have been sprayed with pesticides. So if you walk in Publix or in Lowe's or Pike and you see these, I would not grab one and put it in your mouth because you don't know what it's been treated for. It's not been raised to be eaten. It's been raised as an ornamental. Just putting that out there. So yes, the Native Americans did eat these, but they also didn't get theirs at Publix or Lowe's. They, came from the ground. Anyway. Holiday citrus trees. I'm going to talk about these. A lot of people enjoy holiday citrus because they are so refreshing and so cute and great gift plants. And when they bloom indoors this time of year, there's just nothing like it. If you've never gotten to experience the orange blossoms opening up in your house, you've got to get one of these and try it. So the thing about these, though, is they need a lot of light. Grow them indoors with 12 to 16 hours of supplemental light. Now, say you just got a gift plant and you're not planning on keeping it for a long time or putting it outdoors. That's one thing, just enjoy it. But if you want to keep this thing going, you do need a grow light or some sort of supplemental light. Make sure that you have the right distance of that light to your plant. If you have very bright south-facing windows, you might be able to combine that with a few spotlights to keep it happy. But just know that you can have it in your house for the holidays just to enjoy for a while. But if you really want to keep this thing thriving, you're going to have to give it something else. So they like 8 to 12 hours of direct light per day. They like the predictability of the artificial lights. So just, having it in a window, sometimes it may be shady depending on the weather. This is using an artificial light is going to give you that predictability and that guarantee. There are some citrus trees that do specifically well because of their size indoors. Dwarf varieties of tangerine, lemon, kumquat. You'll see when you go to like a Lowe's or Home Depot or a Pike or wherever you go, Petal and Pond, that these particular trees that are the citrus trees that are meant to be grown indoors as a houseplant, enjoyed that way, they're marked that way. They're usually marketed that way. And they come in dwarf varieties. They're not meant to become huge, towering trees. They're small. They are susceptible to some different pests like scale, spider mites, and whiteflies. Keep the leaves clean, check the undersides of the leaves, and then just use an insecticide that's labeled for use on an edible plant, which is not that big of a deal. I have some insecticidal soap that I spray on plants. It's labeled for things that you can eat. You spray that on there, you keep it clean, you're good to go. And then citrus with sour fruit does better indoors actually because it needs that heat to produce its sugars. They're heavy feeders, so you got to fertilize those things. Acidic, well-draining soil. Look for potting mixes that are specifically for citrus, or amend the regular potting mix with perlite or pumice because you want that good drainage. They do not want to be soggy. Use a pot with a drainage hole always for citrus. And then when the temperatures warm up to above 50 degrees, you can put them back outdoors. If it gets below 40s, you got to bring them back indoors. So there's a little bit of finagling in and out, but it's worth it if you want to grow an indoor citrus because like I said, there's nothing like having that indoor blossom. So lavender in tree form, this is another one that I've been seeing a lot of. It likes a cool, bright location, minimal water, south-facing window or grow light. Don't fertilize it until the active growth occurs. Does not want drafts or heaters, so don't set it by your heating register. It wants to be outside eventually, but it provides a lovely fragrance indoors for that temporary holiday time period. This is one of those, again, that I call temporary houseplant. It's okay for the holidays, but it wants to live outside. Dwarf Alberta spruce is similar. Place it in a cool, bright location. It wants a lot of moisture, but then to dry out a little bit between waterings. And then you want to put this thing in the ground outdoors once the ground is thawed enough to do so. You can have this in your house and enjoy it and baby it a little bit and take care of it, but then it's going to have to go outdoors or it's not going to thrive indoors year round. So I took some pictures of some different types of plants that I've been seeing around it. When I go to all the different places to look at plants, I like to see what the nurseries are putting out and what the growers are trying to get consumers to consume. And something that I saw repeatedly was what they are marketing as the Christmas caladium there on the right. And so they're basically just the pink and white caladiums that we've all grown in the regular, spring, summer season, but they're in a little basket or a little pot with the red foil, and they've got their little label that says Christmas caladium, and they are cute. I mean, there's no denying they're pretty. My issue was every time I saw these in any location, it was as if no one had ever watered them. Once they left the nursery, they were so dry, and these things like moisture. I just didn't feel like I was getting a healthy plant to begin with that I would want to try to nurture, and I wasn't sure how my cats would do with them, and they're cute, and it's a nice gimmick to get people to buy more plants. And then we have, of course, the air plants. I think that they have figured out that if they make pottery for any time of year, any occasion, any holiday, and stick an air plant on it, people will buy it. So it's true, we've got polar bears and other winter animals. Just put an air plant on there and people love it. Now this I did buy, and I felt a little funny because, ooh, it's English ivy, and that's, like the devil's plant here in Georgia. It's an invasive plant. I would never put it outdoors, never in a million years. And when I dispose of it, I'll wrap it tightly in a trash bag. I won't just toss it in my trash. All these, don't come at me. But when I saw this at Trader Joe's, it was just so cute. I couldn't resist. And the price, I thought $12.99 for this cute little thing with the fairy lights. I was a sucker. I thought, I'll put this on my counter. Why not? I am definitely a sucker for these types of things. I'm not going to lie. Okay, so and then there are a lot of combination plants. And so these are very lovely to use as a centerpiece or to give as gifts. They usually have poinsettia, pothos, and ivy in a shared pot. Just know that if you want to keep those going, you'll probably need to separate those out. The pothos is going to want something bigger than that eventually. The poinsettia is just going to be bare or just some plain leaves. It's not going to really look good in there. The ivy's probably going to get spider mites if you don't treat it. Ivy, when they come indoors, they want spider mites. It's almost as if I showed a picture of that to my mom when I got the little topiary, and she's like, make sure you spray it for mites. And I was like, I know, trust me. I've been down that road many times. So make sure you hit that ivy indoors with insecticidal soap or you're gonna regret it. So you'll eventually want to separate those out. And the pothos is really the most practical of the three plants to keep as a year-round houseplant with little to no issues. The ivy is going to take some mite spraying, and you don't want to put it outside. And the poinsettia is going to take a little more effort as well. But it's very cute and very nice to look at, very festive. So here we have some more creations with air plants. We have snowmen, and then we have the little glass balls looking kind of like a snow globe, and they're very cute. I'm thinking some of these are glued in there. They'll have to be removed to water them. If you do get these air plants and you want to keep them going, they can be kept going year round just as a regular house plant. You'll want to dunk them about once a week. Dunk them in a sink full of water, really let them absorb, let them drain, and then just put them back. Some people will tell you to mist them daily. I've never done that. I don't feel like it gives them a really good watering. I mean, if you've had success with that method, then by all means keep going, but I've never really been fond of that. I think it's a little tedious. I just like to give it's dunk once a week, and then I know that it's watered and it's done. So, and you can take them out of their little snowman and move it to your next creation that you have for the next season. So this is an amaryllis I got. I was really impressed. I got this at Whole Foods. It was $10.99, potted with soil in this nice terracotta pot. And usually when you buy one that's potted, they're in a plastic pot that's not very attractive to see. And I thought, well, this is actually a cute pot, and it's in soil, and it's, a really healthy stem. I thought that was a really good price. On the right, this is, I think it was Candy Nymph was the variety. This is one of the many amaryllis that I planted outdoors of my house. And this is the one that was blooming in October, November. So until it got super, super south side of my house. I planted a lot of them on the front, which is west facing, and then I planted several of them on the south facing side. And I, kind of wondered that too. I thought, how are they going to do on the south side against this brick? And as you can see, if you keep them well watered, I mean, they were happy. The ones in the west facing area did not bloom last spring. But they had gone from, in my house in January to then out in the ground. And then there was, a few months later, they don't think they had enough time to build up their stored energy. I expect them to bloom again in the spring. But yeah, they did well. And this was even in a big barrel. It wasn't even in the ground. And so I thought, oh, even more of a risk because it's not getting that insulation from the ground. It's going to get hotter and drier. And it was happy. So. Mhm. And then I want to say thank you to Master Gardener Diane Krish. So I mentioned that I had a humongous, beautiful old Christmas cactus that didn't do well the first year I was given it, didn't bloom, and it always bloomed reliably for the owner. And then I fertilized it and babied it this past year, and it went gangbusters. This thing started blooming in October on my patio, and it's still blooming in my house in December. So this has been going on for like 2 months now of blooms. It's huge, it's happy, and it's just gorgeous. So it goes to show, I'm sure that I probably put it through a little bit of stress going from wherever it didn't belong to Diane. It was one of her friends. Whatever that person, the previous owner had it, their situation coming to mind, it probably stressed the plant, but I brought it back and it's been so happy and so beautiful. So I really, really enjoy it. And then here's some more scenes from around Gwinnett County for your holiday shopping. We have the little Grinchmas tree of the cypress that's bent over. We have the baby poinsettias. And then we have the lavender and rosemary trees. We have the bulbs that are waxed, and make sure that if you want them to rebloom, take the wax off. If you don't, dispose of them, and you're totally fine doing that. We have the holiday cactus, and then even more. And you'll find too that the prices of these different things will vary widely depending on where you go. And I don't get any endorsement from Trader Joe's, but I will say their prices are really good on some of their house plants. I find that they're much less. I just bought a waxed amaryllis for $7.99. It was a huge one too. And you can see some of those for 15 to 20 other places. So if you shop around, you want to look and see Growers Outlet. I don't know that I saw any wax bulbs there, but I did see just the bare root bulbs, and the prices were great, and the bulbs were humongous. So look around, and like Whole Foods, I wouldn't have expected to have that good of a price on that nice of an amaryllis in a pot, but you just never know. And then here is another amaryllis blooming at my house. And then here we have some more plants on the left to enjoy the different herbs and things if you want to bring those indoors as well. And then at this point, if anybody has any questions, you can put those in the chat and I can answer them. Before anybody here in the room has any questions, please let me know.
You have a question?
Okay, let's see. What tips do you have for repotting a large holiday cactus without breaking it? Okay, so pretty much whenever you're repotting a really large holiday cactus, you do just have to go into it accepting that some of it's going to break off. As depressing as that is, because it's so big and beautiful and healthy and you don't want to break it, some of it's going to break. What you really want to do is try to turn it over on its side and then get it out of the pot. Sometimes you have to like set it on its side and kind of bang on the side. You don't want to be pulling on those stems. You want to be pulling it preferably from the root ball. That'll keep it from, it's kind of difficult to explain it that way, but rather than grabbing the stems from the top and pulling it out of the pot, you don't want to do that. You want to turn it over and try to grab that root ball, maybe some gloves, put your hands in that soil and just kind of yank it out that way. You're going to end up with some breakage, but that's really the best way to do it.
Something saran wrap and roll the green part of the plant to keep it all together.
You could. So Lisa mentioned you could roll it on saran wrap and just kind of protect that green part, those stems, as you mess with it, wrap it all up as if you were shipping it basically. And that could help too. Yeah, I've never done that. That's a good idea. And then I planted some amaryllis and they seem to be multiplying. Any experience with separating them for propagation? mine have never gotten so big that I have pulled them off to multiply. I've had them, put little offshoots and make like, bigger, more stalks than just the one or two, but I've never done that. So I would say after they are done blooming, pull them apart and put them in the soil and give them just, the same treatment you would for any other bulb or perennial.
Or extension accepts off.
Yeah, or Lisa says extension will accept your propagating amaryllis here for free. For scientific, yeah, it's all for research. It's completely for research, yeah. Okay, do we have any more questions from anybody? And then I do have a couple plants I'm going to give away to people in the audience here today. The amaryllis and the holiday cactus are going to be given away. You did fill out well, you circled your name on the sheet. Do we have that still? Okay, I'll collect it. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody online. Thank you so much for joining us. And please join us again and register for that first class coming in February. It's creating terrariums. And keep in mind that I do giveaways whenever people are here in person. So I'd love to see you in person. And happy holidays. If you have any questions about plants, please send me an email or give me a call. And then we will go ahead and do our giveaway here in the room. For goodness sakes.
Numbers, I think.
I'm just going to look in there and look. I have a couple numbers in mind. I'm going to do this really unscientifically, but
I'm gonna draw what numbers are next to something.
The granddaughter was
okay.